Hey, this is Candia Raquel, and you are at the Sensual Sessions Podcast, the place to explore sensing pleasure through your senses and moving in a way that is free from inhibition and full of self expression. If you haven't already, please go to my website to make sure you get these episodes delivered weekly on your inbox. It's my name, candiaraquel.com, which is www.candiaraquel.com. And today we have a very important and impressive guest. This is the Bruce Fertman with us, and we are going to talk about walking, and especially walking sensually. So, welcome, Bruce. I am very happy to have you here again at the Sensual Sessions podcast.
I'm happy to be here.
So, tell us, you have a new book about walking. So, why walking? Why is walking so interesting for you as to write a book about it? Because we
Yeah.
take it for granted. It's like something that we just do. We walk somehow.
Mhm. Yes. Well, that's the good news that no one has to really teach us how to walk. If you
Nice.
watch babies, they just somehow learn it, as do all other mammals. So it is something built into us, and that's great. And then, we get older, and at a certain point, usually in childhood somewhere, we start to get self-conscious about our bodies. Often we end up not liking our bodies. That's almost most people. And um, that impairs our coordination and it disturbs our body. And then it disturbs how we move, including walking. And so walking, because it's so uh, prevalent in our life, for if we're lucky to be able to walk, then it's just a logical movement to work inside of to start to bring our body back into balance and comfort and naturalness. It's just you know, humans, we only do very few things. We lie down, we sit, we recline, we sit, we stand, we walk, we talk, we use our hands. That's all. We don't do anything else. So so if you work with a person just in those movements, then just in those ways of being, then you can really improve how they function in the world. And walking is the one that moves the body the most. So, and it moves the whole body quite vigorously, including the organs, and it affects breathing and it moves the pelvis freely if you know how to walk well. And so it's just a logical place to start.
Yes, I like it. A logical place to start. And what is surprise? Well, there are two things that are very surprising to me, though I already knew, like theoretically, but like, yeah, like it's not so creative to be human. Like we are either sitting, standing, or walking. Climbing stairs is a version of walking. It's
Mhm.
not like we are lioness, well, lioness, that in order to hunt, they have to jump to the neck to the gazelle and then do a cartwheel to break the neck of the gazelle and survive that and then carry the 200-kilo carcass. No, no.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
being human has to be human humble. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we are not falcons or eagles. Well, and then the other thing that was like, whoa, like, yeah, the good news is that we don't need to learn to walk. We already found a way to learn. We already taught ourselves how to walk before we could even speak. Like it's something. very primal, and that is developed from from a very early age in a truly embodied way, like
Mhm.
trial and error and moving, and like babies finally lift the head and then they begin to strengthen certain muscles and then flip to their bellies and they begin to work the muscles on the back and they
Mhm.
contralateral movements and suddenly like crawling, and then we like, I don't know how I managed to stand up and then walk, because like if you look at the biomechanics of walking, it's a super uber mega complex movement in
Mhm.
the sense that every joint of the body is involved in walking. It's like a whole body movement dynamic, and if it wasn't so refinedly optimized, like we wouldn't be able to walk for so long. We are a walking species, like in contrast with the tigers, like we
Mhm.
humans have been known to cross the Bering Strait, and like yeah, like we can walk a lot, especially on vacations in Europe.
Well, it's interesting that walking, learning to walk, learning to speak, learning to use your hands, they work together.
They work
So,
together.
yeah, yeah, that all happens simultaneously, within fairly close proximity time-wise. Um, because as a child gets onto 2 feet and their hands are freed, they're not crawling all the time, then they start to work with tools and objects and toys, and they develop dexterity. And also the sound making goes from sound making and just into speech on the cusp of speaking, just usually when babies are starting to walk. So there's a connection, and evolutionarily, those three things went together too. Uprightness, walking, talking, and tools. So it's interesting when you really learn to walk well, it improves your uprightness. It will improve your breathing, which improves your speaking, right? And if you walk well, you get all this movement in your arms, this freedom in your arm structure, and that affects how you use your hands. So it's a very fundamental movement. And if you learn to do it well, all kinds of other things start working better, including your brain, because your brain uses 20% of your oxygen. And if you don't breathe well, you don't get enough oxygen to your brain or to any other part of your body. Doesn't oxygenate your blood enough. But your brain needs a lot of air. And so it helps how you think. So it helps everything. It's very fundamental.
Yeah, so in a way, walking fits the brain, fits oxygen
Mhm.
to the brain. And very interestingly enough, we have been walking for a while. And what mess with walking, it's not the lack of knowledge and understanding, but what you mentioned first, that we get older and become self-conscious about our
Yes.
bodies. We
Yes.
start not liking our bodies, and that like subjective self-relating aspect impairs something as so tangible as coordination, that disturb the way that we walk and the way that we live. So I am very curious about how this perception of the self, like the the conscious idea of ourself, distorts movement. And
Mhm. Well, I
yeah,
can talk a little bit about that.
yes, yes,
And
please.
we write about that in this book, Walking Well, because I'm not trying to teach a person how to walk correctly. I'm trying to free a person up so they walk reflexively, the way a mammal walks. So when you think about other mammals, like my dog, she doesn't, well, one, she doesn't look at herself in a mirror. So she doesn't know what she looks like. She doesn't know she's a dog. She doesn't know how old she is. She doesn't know if she's pretty or she's not. She doesn't know the kinds of things that make us self-conscious. So she's not going to interfere. All those things are not going to interfere. For us, we get so preoccupied with what we look like and how we project to other people and what other people think of us that it just confuses us terribly physically. And so I try to get people to distinguish between their appearance body and their real body, what I call their animal body or their mammal body. And uh, that's where the sensuousness comes in because, uh, like, for example, pelvises are designed to move a lot, and the body is designed in walking, to swing a lot. And it's really beautiful, you know. But if we get ideas in our head like, oh my God, that's too sexual, or that's too feminine, or uh, you know, it's not manly enough, or it's going to attract trouble, or so many complex ideas that confuse us, and it just inhibits how we move. So so much of the book is about letting that kind of stuff go and appreciating the biological brilliance uh, of the body, and to understand how beautifully it's designed to move. And if you get a person intrigued with that, they start to not worry about what they look like because they're enjoying their movement so much and they're feeling better. So that's what we're after.
Yes, you know, I I am loving this that people start to not worry how they look like and they start moving in a better way and enjoying the movement. And when I was a teenager, I was a raver. So I went to these overnight parties that ended 11 in the morning. And in the beginning, it was like always scanning for the outfits of everyone and who was prettier or more handsome, or like, yeah, like we are having fun in the party and you see who's around. But after a certain time passing, like the facades started to melt. Like you can only hold a mask for so long, especially after dancing and getting tired. And when you're getting tired, like the real you start to show up. And I remember that it was very interesting to me that the people that finally caught my eye were men or women, whatever, that were dancing, but they were dancing in such a way that they were not dancing for the others. They were just having such a great time in their body, like really grooving with the music and
Mhm, mhm,
like like really you wanted, like they became attractive to me because I wanted to have a taste of the experience of themselves, of that delight that they found in their own body. And
mhm. Like an authentic expression of themselves.
an authentic expression of themselves. that was like expressing its profound beauty and sensualness and like wow, refined dexterity and organization or whatever, but like wow, I cannot take like after a certain time, yeah, passing, a pretty face becomes boring. Like what is interesting is like what's going on in the person, and it's not that a pretty face or a nice outfit won't do the trick. I mean, what the thing is that if you are only worried about your appearance, you are investing your energy and your attention and your awareness and your beingness in sustaining that projected image. So it's like an a fabricated effort, and
Mhm,
that's
mhm,
something that becomes apparent like in these kinds of experience. And oh, you can see it in the supermarket. Like you can see the person that
mhm,
just want to finish with the errand and throw in the cart everything that is needed for the house. And you can see also the lady that is doing the supermarket, but she's in her body pushing the cart and smelling the shampoos and picking, but she is in like in the fleshiness of of herself, not just on the rationality. And I feel that's
Well,
what
now that brings up an interesting point because when you there's walking to get to where you're going, right? Like there's walking that we call it transportational walking. It's like you have something to do, so you have to get there, and then you got to do it, and then you got to go somewhere else. And we feel this a lot during the day. And so very often when we're ahead of ourselves, we're thinking about that we have to get this done because we have to be somewhere else. We could be walking, but we're not sensing our walking. We're not, you can't appreciate your walking when your mind is ahead of your body. So, uh, one of the things that we teach in the book is to become aware of how walking actually works. And so when you become aware of how walking works, you start your kinesthesia, your body sense wakes up. And so you're more with your body as you're doing things, as you're walking. And that's where the pleasures, because you can't feel the pleasure of walking if your mind is not can't if your body can't feel you're walking because your mind is ahead of yourself. So getting learning the mechanics and the dynamic of walking um, makes you enjoy moving. And so then it's like it's really good to take walks every day outside if you can in a beautiful place, if you can't, just wherever you are. And to do it for the sheer sake of walking and to actually study, practice what makes walking natural and comfortable and energizing, and to put a little special time every day to do that. But eventually, what happens is that becomes a kind of good habit, like you learn it. And then you go into a supermarket, you walk through those doors and you're walking well. In fact, you open your car door or get out of the uh, uh, train and you're going to where you're going and you're used to feeling yourself walking. And so you walk with energy. You walk through those doors with energy and you walk down those corridors with energy, right? And then you're more alive, right?
you're more alive.
That's what we want.
That's what we want, to be fully alive, because
Really.
we are already alive. here. So why wouldn't we fully be alive regardless? Like, yeah, we gotta go do our thing, live our life, and we can do it transportationally fully. And I'm very happy because you have just um, solved a long time curiosity that I had, because Marilyn Monroe in the Niagara film was recorded doing the longest walk still to our day in cinema. And like, she was in the middle of a crisis and it's a terrible story, and you just see her walk away, and it was like, I think over a minute, which is too much for just a scene, but it wasn't boring. Like, I mean, what was it in her walk to fill up the experiential space of such a length?
Well, what's very interesting, if you've ever seen some photographs of Marilyn Monroe reading with books, because she read
She read.
a lot, and she read about the body. And she read people who were interesting in that period. So there's a photograph of her reading Alexander's book, F.M. Alexander's book.
Wow.
And then there's a photo of her reading Mabel Todd's book, The Thinking Body. So she studied two of my main disciplines. So that woman was in her body, and she knew um, she knew how to move well,
Yeah, she
she
knew what
understood her
she was
body.
doing. She knew what she was doing, and she was a Gemini like you. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the thing is that Marilyn in that scene, she was not only transporting herself from A to B, but she was fully embodied in the fleshiness of her movement, and that was like the epicenter of her experience. And on top of that was the crisis that she was also embodying in the movie. So the thing is that,
Mhm.
yeah, we go through our lives like finishing task and being like super worried and always with the head ahead of our bodies, and we leave the body behind, and then we lose balance and we fall. And I love the solution, the very practical solution that you present to this very human problem in today's civilization, that is like, take a moment to walk every day just for the sake of walking. And as you keep on doing it, you will start to notice more and more details in the experience, and feeling like more acquainted with being who you are in movement.
Mhm.
So then like you default back into this like organized organic state that you thrived in when you were a baby and taught yourself how to walk and everything. And now when you go to do your thing and walk in the airport or work in the supermarket, you will be doing your things, you will be carrying yourself from A to B, but in your body, like
That's it.
yeah, as it is and as it should have been. And that is sexy.
So now I'll tell you why it's important to read the book. And because let's say, if you look at people walk, if you're in some busy place and you look at people walk, train station or something, you'll see a lot of people, their bodies are pretty disorganized, not comfortable, and uh, and they don't walk very well. If you understand the potential of walking well, it's like 80% of adults just don't walk well. So, so they have certain habits that are so fixed in their body that there's no way that they're going to be able to walk well. If you can't sit well, you can't stand well. And if you can't stand well, you can't walk well. They all go together. So, so, so if you go out and walk every day, that's a great start because at least you're moving your body because people sit like at just an inordinate amount of time now in around the world in first world countries. So that's going to be good. It's going to help your breathing a little bit. You're going to get a little exercise. That's great. But you're practicing walking poorly. So you're going to continue to walk poorly. At least you're walking. That's the good news. But you're going to be getting more and more fixed in walking poorly because that's what you're practicing. But if you learn how to walk well, and it is not difficult, then you're going to be practicing walking better and better until you're really walking well. And then when you're walking well, you get all the perks that come with walking. So that's why it's important to study a little bit. That's why you know what you know, and that's why you can help your students, right? Because there's a certain amount of knowledge you need, and then there's a certain amount of practicing you need to do.
Yes, and I love what you say that what we practice as a habit crystallizes.
Yes, it's what you get.
It's yeah, what you practice is what you get. So if you sit poorly, you will stand poorly and walk poorly. So begin with however you can just move and walk, and that will help your heart and your brain.
Just start to help.
Yeah, that's the step number one. Like apply the Nike principle. Just do it.
That's number
Yeah.
one.
And whenever you find a little bit of more leeway, like see if you can get more curious on how you're doing what you're doing, and and
Hmm.
add more, yeah, like more consciousness, because it's a complex pattern walking. But if you learn to walk, if you reteach yourself how to walk well, you will get all the benefits of it. And
Yes, and the way that I've worked out a methodology, it's only taken me 50 years, but I've worked out a methodology that
years,
is
but
so that
but
it what?
aren't you like 47?
No, I'm 74. So
The opposite. Not
yeah, the
47,
opposite.
you're 74.
Yeah, yeah.
Ah, yeah, and you stay this young naturally by walking well.
Well, I've studied so much in my life, but walking is the easiest way for me to teach people what I know and for them to be able to apply it in their everyday life. But I've worked out a methodology that is so simple that anybody can learn it and improve and not and quickly. I mean, quickly. It's like you just learn the first thing and then that leads into the second thing and then you get those two and the third thing starts to happen and it's such a organically logical sequence and it's so much the way walking works that it reminds the body goes, oh yeah, that's how it works. And then this natural thing just starts coming back. And it's in the book. It's all you got to do is read the book. I mean, you can learn it without me,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Yeah.
You just need to get the book and come back to yourself, because it gives me the sensation of coming back home to you, to your movement. Like you taught yourself, you alone, how to walk when you were the most little, cute, and vulnerable creature. But the thing is that back then, when you were a crawling baby, you were not concerned on your appearances, on what other people think. And I get a sad feeling that as we get older, we begin to pixelate ourselves. We become blurry in order to be more, to think that we are more likable for the sake of others. When in truth, everyone is so busy with their own thing that we are
Yeah,
not
they don't
thinking.
notice.
Yeah,
They're,
yeah,
they're looking at their phones now all the
yeah.
time.
So, so this practice of walking well, of first starting to walk and then re teach yourself how to walk, it's a practice of stop being blurry and become more like more detailed, more high
Mhm.
definition, more 4K high definition in the sense of yourself, and coming back home to that state that was very authentic when you were super, just a
You
little.
know, one of the things people don't realize with babies, if because I've watched this little child next to me since she was born, and she's about a year and a half now. And you know, I saw her almost every day. So, and I've watched that with my own children. So, what one of the things you don't realize is that they move about 1,000 times more than we do in every day. They are moving constantly. If we tried to do what they do in one day, we couldn't do it. It's like, and that's how much training they're engaged. They wake up in the morning and they just start moving, and they don't stop until they're exhausted at night. They just keep moving, and you know they're squatting and going up and down, and then they're crawling, and then they're going up steps, and then they're trying to walk, and then they're you know they're picking up things that are compared to if it was the same size proportion scale to us, they're picking up things that are like this big, and you know opening doors that would be totally gigantic for us,
Yes, yes,
and they're moving so much. So we really need to move more. Otherwise,
yes.
especially now with virtual reality the way it is and the phones, we just have to move more if we're going to stay healthy.
Yes, and the thing is that babies move non-stop, and that movement is brimming with pleasure. Like they don't get bored. They are really having a good time.
And
Just
they're learning. They're learning.
they are learning. So it's very important that we don't stop.
Yeah, it's important. You know, I've almost all my teachers were active into their 90s and a few over 100. And the reason one reason they live so long, I think, having known them for a long time and watched them and learned from them, is uh, they understood their body. They knew how it worked and they moved it well, and they breathed well because their breathing chamber was so organized, so open, that breathing just happened fully by itself. And I think this is what all my teachers had in common. So even though their genetics were different and they had very different lives, they all lived really long, but they all really knew their body and they all moved well and breathed well.
Yeah, they really knew their body and they really moved and breathed.
So
Well,
when they were my age, they were
they were
so
doing what you are
they,
doing,
they
looking
were
25
they were
years younger.
so vigorous. You know, they were so vigorous. If you would see them from the back when they were 35, when they were 75, they looked 35 because their backs were so organized, their whole body was so organized that from if you didn't see their face, you would think they were 35 and an athletic 35.
Athletic 30.
Yeah.
There's something I have seen in really good dancers and really good martial artists, that there comes a point around 45 where you cannot tell if they are 45 or 85, like because of the refinement and dexterity of their movement, but especially because of a certain sensuousness, like
Mhm.
a voluptuous quality of movement, like really like when you see a jaguar moving, like the
Oh,
jaguar,
yes, that's right. That's right.
yeah, yeah, and they even have a presence that they come into the room and it's like you don't know if it's enticing, attractive, or freaking scary.
Mhm.
Like
Well,
there's like
how I,
that's the
yeah,
animal body that you mentioned.
it's the
That's
animal body. And a jaguar or a panther is just the perfect example. So a great dancer or a great martial artist, or maybe not even great, but with really good training, they develop a softness, an inner softness. So they're not positional. They're not they're not only concerned with how they project. There is you use the word sensual. Um, it is kind of sensual. They don't experience it as sensual, I don't think, but it's a body that has really good tone. It's not flaccid and it's not rigid, and a body that is not interfering with itself, where the joints are loose, and it's naturally coordinated, it will move like that, and
yeah,
it will look like that. And we're designed to move like that.
that's our true nature, and it's very sexy. Like when you see
Yeah,
someone,
it's beautiful.
yeah, and the people that, if it happens, because it has happened to me, that my I have been has been caught in the supermarket by someone moving, is because of this quality. And yeah, we talk about martial artists and dancers with good technique. Good technique, just to say that they practice not getting in in their own way. But you can also see that in people that just stayed in that embodied state since they were babies.
Mhm,
They didn't cancel the sense of their selves.
mhm.
And you don't need
It's rare, but it's beautiful when you
fair,
when you
but
see it.
yeah,
Yeah.
people that resisted the cultural education against
Mhm.
body.
Yeah.
Because now I understand. I don't know. Maybe it was Pina Bauch that said that,
Beautiful
yeah,
dancer.
that said the goal of technique is to acquire so you can get rid of it. And what she meant by that was you train and train and train so hard as a dancer just so you learn how not to get in your own way.
Yes, that's right. That's why there's a saying, good technique doesn't show.
Yes.
And also, Martha Graham talked about controlled abandonment,
Wow.
right? So it's like you have to develop the control of your body, but at a certain point, there's such inner control that you're free to do anything you want. And so that controlled abandonment is just a beautiful. And then Isadora said, and I find this one really interesting, if you can walk, you can dance.
Wow.
And people think she meant that dancing was easy. She didn't.
She
She meant that walking is not so easy. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
so most of her classes, like the first half of her classes was just walking.
Wow.
And then my main mentor studied with Isadora's most advanced students who she performed with. And those were the dance teachers that my teacher studied with. So walking was something that my teacher taught every single day, you know? And and so I discovered quite early, I was in my 20s, my early 20s. And then I realized that walking is kind of the quintessential human movement. And if you really get yourself together in walking, all other movements in your life kind of work themselves out.
I really believe that. I really believe that. And
So
they have,
that's why I wrote the book on walking. Because even though I have all this training, I can teach all kinds of fancy things. These days, all I teach is really the basics.
yeah,
And I want to say something about that because, and maybe we can finish here, is I live in New Mexico. You live in Mexico. I live in New Mexico, in a outside of a little town called Santa Fe. But I live way in the country. And I do these events here in the summer and fall called Walking Way, the Walking Way. That's my work right now in my life. And I run what I call Walking Way gatherings, and they're 9 days. And I really teach people how to sit, how to stand, how to walk, how to move, how to wake up all the senses. And then I take them to the most beautiful places every day around here. And I just have them walk in nature. And this it's taken me a lifetime to sort of figure out this structure, but it's really transformative for people. So I just want to say to your listeners that if they ever want to come and study with me and come to New Mexico, that they should.
yeah. They definitely should. Like step number one, like when this episode is over, go to Amazon and get The Walking Way from Bruce Fertman.
Yeah, then from there you can find me. And
Yeah,
you're the first person I want to get from Mexico to New
yes,
Mexico.
yes, for a walking way gathering that in a way is like the alpha and the omega, like, and the eternal circle. Like begin walking, and then
Yes.
most advanced, the most complex, what Isadora Duncan helped, like in the center of her teaching practice and dancing, was walking. And also in Bujinkan martial art, the key practice for ninjas, which Bujinkan includes ninjutsu and the other samurai schools, and the main practice of ninjas and samurais is walking. And when you see like the videos, it's not performance fighting, because if you practice the technique properly, like there's gonna be a on living of someone like of the opposite. So that's why there are no competitions, and the movements are so efficient because they are rooted in something as primal and organic and unconscious as a walking pattern. So what appears to be like, for example, self-defense movements are baby movements and natural reactions, and a kick is just an extension of the bringing your leg forward into walking. So it all comes from the body and away from this projected self image that makes us very blurry. And another nice example that comes to my mind is Naomi Campbell, like the top model, and her walk. Like it's amazing to see her walk with these super high heels,
Mhm.
stilettos, because like she She looks like a panther.
Yeah, if you know how to walk well, you can walk well in anything.
Yeah.
You can walk well on 8-foot stilts.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. But
Like a circus performer. If you know how to walk well, you can walk well. It doesn't
yeah.
matter.
Yeah. If you don't walk well and you wear high heels, you're gonna look like a chicken that stepped over
Yeah, that's
a
right.
cactus.
Yeah, if you watch a movie I like very much called The Tango Lesson,
The
and
lesson? I don't. I.
it's called The Tango Lesson, and there's the main tango dancer in it is Pablo Verón, and I had a lesson with Pablo Verón in Wuppertal, Germany, and it started out, and he said, "Well, let me see you just do one dance from beginning to end, and let's see what happens." And I was relatively beginning tango dancer. So I do, and he comes down. He was sitting up higher, and he walks down, uh, and he says, "This is very unusual. You're a beginning tango dancer, and no matter who I work with, even if they're advanced, the very first thing I have to do is work with their walking because they don't know how to walk. You know how to walk. It's amazing. You walk really well." And then he said, uh, and then the next thing I have to work with tango dancers is I have to work with their embrace because no one knows how to touch another person. And he said, "But you have a gorgeous embrace. I don't know why."
I
He
don't
says,
know
"But
why.
those two things are beautiful." He says, "You just don't know how to dance tango." So then he said, "Well, okay, like here's your basic, right? You know that, but you could start like this, you could finish like this." And and then he just started to teach me tango. But it was interesting, that lesson.
Yes,
It was
because
a real affirmation of my training.
yes, because you already have the body. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah, martial
And
art
tango is a walking dance.
tango is a walking dance and it's
Yes.
super advanced and complex because you cannot hide. Like it's easy in a way it's easier to run because you camouflage like if you are doing whatever, but
Yeah.
when you slow things down, like the true thing appears. So, just to wrap this up, what's one thing that we can do, like to keep in mind when we go and begin our walking practice?
Well, I don't really have the time to do a lot, but the first thing I would do is I would see what happens if you decide not to control your feet.
Wow!
Like you don't do anything that you were taught about your feet. Like you don't like try to point your toes forward or keep your knees over your toes, or you don't try to walk quietly, or you don't try to take a big step, or you just let your feet do what they want. Let them come down any way they want. And then the next thing is to leave your feet soft and your ankles loose. Like don't do anything with your ankles. Just just as if they were like a horse's hoof. Like they're not that different really. So well, they are really different actually. So but yeah, totally
Yeah,
different. But
actually,
I won't go into that.
yeah, I
But let me say one last thing. So letting your feet come down any way they want, leaving them soft, and not controlling your ankles, really loose ankles. That's the first thing, right? Well, actually, I'll just leave you with that because if you really do that, something will change.
yeah, yeah, and I am already feeling because I was sitting as if I was gonna say like a eagle, but actually I was like a parrot with with my toes like
Uh-huh.
with the nails like against my tennis
Yeah,
shoes
yeah.
toe, and and you said like, don't control your feet, and I was like, immediately my feet softened and my shoulders softened, and now
Yeah,
I
yeah,
my whole state of awareness shifted just by not controlling my feet. And then
that's it.
when you said
That's where it starts.
loosen up your ankles, it's like if I had like bumping tendons in the front of my ankles. So I released them. And just with those two things, my whole posture sitting changed. So I can't wait
Good.
to finish this
There you
episode
go.
and go for a walk to practice not
Good.
controlling my
And
feet.
then come to New Mexico,
Yeah, and then go to New Mexico with all
or
the
I'll come to
people
Mexico. But
listening.
we'll teach people how to walk, okay?
Yeah. And
All right.
finally, tell us, how can we find you online? And
Go to walkingwell.com. So simple. And uh, go to graceofsense.com, Grace of Sense. And you write to me at brucefertman.com. So that's very simple also. And I always write back to people. So if you want to write to me, you just write to me. And if you can only write to me in Spanish, we have Google Translate, so it's no problem.
fantastic. Thank you so much, Bruce. It's
You
been
are welcome.
a real joy to have this conversation with you. And also, Essentialist, thank you for being here. Go to check Bruce Fertman's website, graceofsense.com, walkingway.com, brucefertman.com, and
Walkingwell.com.
walkingwell.com,
Yeah.
brucefertman.com. And I think you're also on Instagram, Bruce Fertman. Bruce Ferd
I'm on Facebook
on Facebook.
mainly. Yeah.
And yeah, and go get his book and book your spot on the next walking way gathering there in the beautiful sunsets and sunrises of New Mexico. And if you haven't already, go grab the free guide to awaken sensuality at my website, Candia Raquel, my name, .com, which is www.candiaraquel.com. Until next time, remember to take the time to sense your fire so you can share the flame.